The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Vaishali Jain, and I'll be your moderator today. And thank you so much for joining us here at Starter Learning, a market leader in providing leadership and talent development solutions. Starter Learning provides talent development solutions through its blended training approach, which is a mix of e-learning, classroom training, and live interactive sessions coming from industry experts, including CXOs from Fortune 1000 companies, Ivy League professors, and best-selling authors. So we're very excited to host today's webinar on 5 secrets to bold and gutsy leadership. And presenting today's topic is John Baldoni. Just a little bit about John. John is an internationally recognized leadership consultant. He's also a coach and an author of over a dozen books. As a highly sought after executive coach and leadership educator, John has had the privilege of working with senior leaders in virtually every industry. He's regularly featured in Forbes, in Harvard Business Review, Thinkers 50, Inc., and many more publications. In 2017, Trust Across America named John one of its top thought leaders. Global Gurus ranked John on its list of top leadership experts, and Inc.com named John to its list of top 50 experts for leadership and management. Now, please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic, and we offer a collection of leadership, management, and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. So if you're interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with one of our learning consultants through our website at starterlearning.com. And now I'd like to introduce the head of global operations and strategic marketing. It's Gaurav Bansal. Again, he's the head of global operations and strategic marketing at Starter Learning. And he's going to discuss some of the values and important things about Starter Learning and how organizations across industries are benefiting from Starter Learning courses and other talent development solutions it has to offer. Gaurav?
Hey, Vishali, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the great introduction. And good afternoon to all of you and thank you for logging in at this point of time, taking time out of your busy schedule. I would like to start by sharing a few details about Starter Learning, a collaborative knowledge platform bringing world's best leadership insights from Fortune 1000 leaders, best-selling authors, and Ivy League professors. It is a micro-learning platform helping organizations achieve the goal of a smarter workforce for future, adapting to changes and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of our offerings, both off-the-shelf and customized, leveraging our global delivery capabilities. Introducing our panel of experts who are from the top global organizations and Ivy League universities like Harvard, Columbia, New York, Dartmouth, and so on. There are n number of university professors coming from some of the top American universities featuring on our platform. Each of these experts have more than 25 plus years of domain expertise, and majority of them have been or even today are at the CXO level. Each of you can only imagine the kind of rich knowledge and experience they have had to share with us on this platform, and we call them as practicing managers. Talking about a few courses and the diversity of our experts, you will find a course from CIO of United Nations, Ati Riazi, on organizational leadership, a course from Jean, who is also the Chief Knowledge Officer at Cisco, and a course from Linda Hill on collaborative innovation. She's also a professor at Harvard University. And of course, we have John's course, which deals with the bold and gutsy leadership based on his recent book, Moxie. And of course, the last but not the least, all the courses on our platform are SCORM compliant, which makes them accessible on any device or platform, from your laptop to a mobile to a tablet. Starter Learning has a comprehensive course library of more than 200 plus courses, 20 plus programs, and 4,500 plus bite-sized videos. These courses and programs come with built-in assessment to help each of you enhance your learning experience. So as we always say, if you want to be a leader, learn from the leaders, get exposed to their best practices, understand how they run their organizations, understand how they build those organizations so successfully. That's it. Over to you, Vaishali. Thank you so much. I think it's time for John now.
Great. Thank you, Gaurav, for that. Now, just going to talk a little bit about why you should attend this webinar. So with this webinar, as a leader, you'll learn how to be more mindful of circumstances surrounding you, as well as your own strengths and shortcomings. So how using the tried and true steps based on the Moxie concept will help bring out the inner leader in us, especially when we're all in crisis mode. So Moxie is a concept that the modern leader is wise to adopt. It's one part courage, one part can-do spirit, and one part recognition. And it provides a roadmap to inspire innovation and effective leadership. So with that, I'm just going to give you a quick tutorial and an overview of the logistics before we get started. So to start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. All you have to do is hit the escape key and find the Zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. And everyone has been muted except for our presenters. So please feel free to submit any questions you have for our presenters in the questions pane, and we'll address them throughout the session. And please do feel free to go ahead and ask questions throughout the webinar. We'll go ahead and answer them. And there's a PDF of today's slides that are available in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer that you can access. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to John to present.
Thank you, Vaishali. I appreciate the warm introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here. Where I am, it's cold and snowy outside, but I'm sure there's some folks from warmer climes who are joining us. So welcome, everyone. Good to see everybody. Thanks for logging in. We have quite a crowd today. I want to pick up on what Vaishali said. We, live in times of crisis. We sort of lurch from crisis to crisis, and part of that, the crises aren't really crises, but they are perceived to be. And I think the reason for that is because we're all pressed for time. We're all doing so many things. We're all being pushed and stretched in so many different ways that we feel that our lives are coming apart. And so that's why some of the things I'll talk about today might help you feel a little bit less stressful. But the root of that is comes down to a concept called Moxie. And Moxie is an old word, and I'm an enthusiast of old film noir from the 40s and 50s and even the 30s, when you would have gangster type characters or tough guys, and you would say that, oh, that guy's got moxie, and maybe it would be the prize fighter who's in the ring for one last time trying to earn some money for the rest of his life, or it's the gangster moll who's trying to shake off the mob, and you would say of those characters, oh, they got moxie. And I often, and I dedicated this book to my daughter, who is someone who's always charged through life with a sense of resilience and self-empowerment. And people say about her, she's got moxie. So we have a poll question coming up, and it's we're gonna, and it talked about what your roles are. So take a moment to identify that, and as you do, we're gonna keep moving because time is of the essence. So let's go forward here. Okay, what is moxie, and how do I put moxie to work? Well, in a word, I just told you what it is. It's your resilience, a sense of resilience, and how you put it to work is it helps you gain better control of who you are. And I think that's in a nutshell, and that's what we're going to talk about. For purposes of my lecture today, I turned moxie into, excuse me, the screen is jumping around here. I apologize. I turned it into a concept which I'll explain in a moment. But first of all, there's an old concept about the difference between a boss and a leader. Bosses are someone who tells you what to do. Leaders inspire you to do something. Now, what's the difference between that? In everyday management, actually, bosses must lead and leaders must manage. And bosses or management is the art of looking down. In other words, making sure the trains run on time. Leadership is about making sure the right people are on the train and headed in the right direction. All right. And the nature of leadership is leaders are looking out over the horizon as to what comes next. They're also looking around them, and that's a concept that will come up in just a moment. So, okay.
So, John, just based on what you said, I'm sorry.
No, please.
So that's an interesting definition of what a leader is and what a follower is. How would you define the relationship between a leader and a follower then?
A leader and a follower. Okay. First of all, that can be an interchangeable depending on your role. So, for example, sometimes you might be a team leader, and other times you're a team member. So that can flip back and forth. But a leader is the one that sets the direction. Good leaders do that in conjunction with the people he or she leads, but they have the ultimate say-so in the direction of what's going to be done. The followers embrace the leader by saying, I buy into this. And it's up to the leader to create conditions where people want to follow. It's certain, I mean, in everyday management, let's be realistic. We do what our boss tells us to do. But a good boss, we want to do what he or she directs us to do. Why? Because we also share that boss's or that leader's point of view. We share his or her values, and we know that boss has the best interests of the organization at heart. So we endorse our leader with our followership. So, and this leads right into this slide, which is, do you have what it takes? And that's something to, and I think we kind of just talked about it. Do you have what it takes to lead others? I mean, there's an old saying that, you know, leaders, it's not, you're not elevated to leadership. You choose to become a leader. You might have a rank, and we say in the military, rank is given, but trust is earned. Same with leadership. In other words, you have to earn people's trust. And how do you do that? Well, you live the example. You do what you say you will do. You follow through on things. You create conditions for people to succeed. You support them. You coach them. You encourage them. You discipline them. You hold yourself accountable. You hold others accountable. All of these things go into what leadership is all about. And let's be very realistic. Sometimes leaders, we glorify them too much. Leadership is not sainthood. And there's a very popular movie right now called Darkest Hour about Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill is one of my very favorite historical figures. But he was a deeply flawed individual, but he mattered most. He made that positive difference for Britain, certainly in the fight against Nazism, but he did have his flaws. And so that's the thing, is leaders do make mistakes, but good leaders make up for them. They leave their example, sets the right tone for other people. So doing what it takes is critical. Moxie is, you can look at it in many different ways. That's the guts, the gumption, determination. So a lot of people have courage, a lot of people have get up and go, and a lot of people are determined. But what makes it different, and what I like to focus on Moxie, it's what are your goals? You put your guts, gumption, and determination in pursuit of what it is you want to achieve, whether it's getting your MBA, getting a promotion. Those things are individualistic. As a leader, helping my team succeed, achieving team goals. And that's the interesting thing, Vaishali, and hitting to you on what's the difference between a follower and a leader. Followers can be a little more self-centered, I think, because they want to achieve for themselves, partly because they want to be recognized. But a leader has to be looking out for every single person in the organization to help him or her achieve their best potential. So a leader with Moxie has the guts, gumption, and determination, but his or her goal is to help the team succeed. And I always have a good example of that. I got to know Alan Mulally when he was running Ford Motor Company. And whenever I would talk to him, Alan would always talk about the team, the team, the team. And that's what good leaders do. They take a step back, they shine the light on the team, and they enable the team to succeed. So, and what comes into Moxie, if you break it down a little bit, and Vaishali touched on this earlier, it's your fire, your drive, and your resilience. Fire is your passion. But passion, it's good. It's what get you up in the morning, what you want to achieve. But again, it has to be directed. It has to be focused, and it's focused on your purpose. Your drive, it's your determination, your get up and go. And this last concept is resilience. Resilience is so critical. I've written about it a lot, and once I had the opportunity to speak at Central Oklahoma University, and students in the class had all been assigned one of my books, Lead by Example, where I had a whole chapter on resilience, and the students were asked to coalesce around various topics in the book, and there was a whole group that had coalesced around the concept of resilience. And aside from making my day, because I thought that was important, I thought they had uncovered a key concept that is often overlooked. And part of the reason we overlook it is because we are in part of a celebrity culture where we see success, and our perception is that people are overnight successes. There's no such thing as that. People who are, quote, overnight successes may have been working 20 or 30 years to achieve that. We're coming into Olympic season. We're going to see people perform on the international stage. They've been working their whole lives to get to that moment. And so they've encountered a lot of resistance, but they've had the fire to drive, and they've had the resilience to overcome defeat. And you know, there's no shame in being knocked down. It's what you do next that matters. You know, we use the word difference between quitting and losing. There's no embarrassment to quit, because sometimes it's not right for you. Like, take ice skating. I have skated, but I'm not going to be a very good skater, so it's not, I can quit that sport. But does that make me a loser? No, because I'm not quitting life. I'm not quitting athletic pursuits. I'm choosing to do something different. So that's part of resilience, and I think it's a critical concept that is often overlooked in our society. The other thing you need to have is street smarts, and there's a difference, an old-fashioned word, difference between book learning and what happens in reality. And I think those of you who have MBAs, sometimes they come out with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they think, well, I know it all. And I mean, you really don't. You don't say it out loud, but you think you do. Well, that's where street smarts come in. It's, in other words, it's understanding how the world works. And I think it's particularly important now in this era when we are bombarded with the concept called fake news. And what's insidious about fake news, it's not just aligned to the media. It's not just aligned in politics. But I'm beginning to see fake news used as an excuse for not buying into an idea. And that is very dangerous. And that is why leaders need to be particularly street savvy. How do they connect with people who are mixing opinion with fact? All right. So how do you do that? Well, I think moxie comes into play. And as you've seen in this graphic, or you will see on this graphic, I've broken down moxie into 5 different concepts. It's mindfulness, opportunity, X factor, innovation, and engagement. And I'm going to talk about each one. The first one being mindful. And Vaishali teed it up by saying, our stressful lives. So we're just going to, a poll question here is, take the time to reflect on my performance. How am I doing that? What should I be doing? So take a moment to do it, but I'm going to proceed along with our presentation. Okay, so
John, we have a question.
Yeah.
Regarding the relationship between managers, leaders, and empowerment. So the question is around the difference between how leaders empower and how managers empower.
You know what, Vaishali? I have no idea what the difference is, because I wouldn't draw a distinction that way. Again, it's leaders lead and managers manage. So what are the kinds of things that leaders do, or managers do? Managers set the budget, they plan, they get the right people in place to do a job. What do leaders do? They look over the horizon, they coach people. What do managers and leaders do together? They communicate, they coach, they direct, they focus, they support. So the idea of empowerment is If you have the power, you share it with others. That's how I would define it. So we get to the concept now of mindfulness. What is mindfulness? In its basic point, it is a sense of presence, being in the moment. And that is very, very difficult. Mindfulness requires a degree of patience. And I'll be honest with you, I try very honestly to be a mindful person, but I have a trouble with being patient. Why? Because I'm always in a hurry. And just the other day I was in a supermarket counter and I saw a Time Life publication on mindfulness. So when you see mindfulness at the checkout counter in a Time Life publication, you know it's a universal concept. But the danger is that it'll be perceived as a fad. It's not. It's mindfulness certainly dates well into it comes from the concepts of Buddhism, of being present in the moment. Okay, and it's a discipline. But mindfulness for leaders is a little bit different. Leadership requires you to be aware of self, but also what's going around you. Okay, and some of the research I've done is on mindfulness is that savvy leaders know what's going on. They take time to know their people, and they take time to look outside the organization. Okay, so what is mindfulness rooted in? We talked about presence. We talked about purpose. Purpose is a fundamental concept for me. Purpose is the why. Purpose is the catalyst. Purpose is what fuels you, what it is you do, what you want to do. And purpose is great to say, I have purpose in my life, but what are you doing about it? And that is where intention comes in, and your intention leads to your sense of presence. I am in the moment. Why am I in the moment? As a leader, I say I am in the moment because I'm going to affect change. I am going to make things better for our organization. I will help my team succeed. So we see purpose, or presence, purpose, and intention all flowing in together. And thinking about these concepts together is a sense of mindfulness. It's being in the moment. But it's more or less, while mindfulness in its truest sense is inner directed, you need to know yourself, but it's also what's going on with my team. And there's a wonderful little mantra that I learned from a military man. It's in a book called Hope is Not a Method. And it talks about a gentleman who was in combat situation. And he kept asking himself 3 questions. What's happening? What's not happening? And what can I do to influence the action? Those are questions good leaders should ask. So what is happening with my team? What are we doing well? What's not happening? Okay, well, people aren't showing up. We don't have the right tools. Our customers don't like our product. We need to make changes. All of these things, we need to change processes. And finally, what must I do to influence the outcome? Okay, so what do I do? How do I train my people better? Do we need better resources? Do I need to add people? Do I need to take away people? Do I need to be more customer focused? Do I need to be more in tune with my boss? Do I need to educate my people, provide them with training? All of these questions come up, and that's just asking yourself these questions is a sense of mindfulness. And here on my presentation, we've got some mind. Yes. Michelle.
Got a question here. How can leaders make good decisions?
Making a good decision is evaluating the options, being a critical thinker, which is the ability to evaluate 2 good choices and make a right decision. But it's also good decisions are based upon your assumptions. Are my assumptions fundamentally correct, or are they flawed? And good leaders, before they make a decision, understand what is the basis of this decision. Is our thinking correct, or is our thinking flawed? And then finally, good leaders, you pull the trigger. You're never going to know the outcome exactly. You think you do, and you may say the old Pareto rule, which is 80% of the information, and with 20% doubt, or as the Marines have lowered it to 70% factual and 30% unknown. You're going to have to make those decisions. Failing to make a decision also leads to stasis. It leads to analysis paralysis. But I think the thing about leaders, and this is where mindfulness comes in, so it's an excellent question. You're never going to really know if it's a good decision until the decision is made and time goes on. And so you have to trust yourself, and you have to know in that moment, I made the best decision I could with the information I had. It might be right, it may prove to be wrong, but I did what I could do at that moment. And I think leaders have to trust themselves. Now, on the other hand, if you're making slapdash decisions without thinking, well, then you're culpable for making poor decisions. But on major things, if you've done your research, challenged your assumptions, asked for advice, solicited alternative points of view, then you can rest easy. You've made the right choice. So if you look at these mindfulness questions, here's one thing you can start doing. At your next team meeting, put down your smartphone. Don't be accessing it. Be in the moment. Be present. Be there for others. They need your input. They need you to listen. So put down the smartphone for the time of that meeting. That's the advice for mindfulness. So moving on. Our next concept in Moxie is opportunity. Seek challenges and turn them into opportunities for success. And this happens in all good organizations. And I'll skip over this. So what is opportunity? What's swirling around you? Okay, there's always the adversity. Somebody's going to tell you no, or circumstances are going to dictate challenges. Again, we talked about intention. What is it that I really want to achieve? And then what's my service mindset? And I think I've been very influenced by the thinking of Adam Grant, who wrote, he's a professor, very young professor at Wharton, and he wrote a couple of books, but the first book he wrote was Give and Take, which is about the concept of reciprocity. But it's about creating opportunities for other people. And the other day I heard a very inspirational talk from Father Greg Boyle, who is a Jesuit priest in Los Angeles, and he created an organization called Homeboy Industries, which is the largest gang intervention and rehabilitation program in the world. Why did he start this program, which started in 1988? Well, it's because look at gang members. What kinds of opportunities would a gang member, or especially a ex-gang member, have? So he created an opportunity. He created jobs for them. And today it's a $20 million business, which has rehabbed a lot of people and provided them not so much the jobs, but it's provided them with hope and affirmation of life. What Father Boyle has done is to create opportunities for other people, to mobilize the spirit, mobilize the community, mobilize change. Father Boyle is a very mindful person, but he's also opportunistic. They look at a need and they see it. For example, what's an obstacle that an ex-gang member might have? Well, a proliferation of tattoos. So what does Homeboy Industries offer? Tattoo removal service. Pretty smart, eh? So it's just one of those things. That's what being opportunistic about is. Yes, you want to do it in a business sense, but it's also in a cultural sense, also in your community, also what you can do in life. Find out things you can do. And when we think about that, what are some things, what opportunities you're looking at? But here's another thing. What's one thing, if you look in your work, what's one thing I could do to help my colleague succeed in his or her job? What's one thing I could do to make their day? Not being a busybody, but how can I make my colleague's job a little bit easier? To create a more healthy a workplace, a better environment. Those are the kinds of things you might want to be thinking about. It creates opportunity. It's a little thing. It's not a random act of kindness. It's a planned act of kindness. It's a planned service. And what's the service for? To help you connect more effectively, to help another connect more effectively with you. And when that occurs, you get real teamwork. That's what opportunity is like. Our next concept here is X factor. And is someone, a colleague of my wife always says, well, you kind of cheated, didn't you? Because you call X factor. You just sort of made that up. And I said, sure. So X factor is my catch-all concept for character. And without leadership, without character, there is no leadership. And that the research here proves that. I don't want to run through all the numbers there, but what is character when you boil it down to? And I got this from some survey information, but I thought through it some stuff. So character is surrounded by things like ambition, courage, curiosity, compassion, and humor. Yes, character is what you do when you don't think anybody's watching. You've all heard that definition. Probably heard it in kindergarten, but I honestly cannot think of a better direction for it. But the interesting thing from a leadership standpoint, people of character think about it, but people of true character act upon it. It's not what I think about, it's what I'm going to do. And it's a wonderful example. It's in my book. I had the opportunity to interview General John Allen, who was at that time leading the coalition forces in Afghanistan in 2014, something like that. He was there when we were transitioning from more of a NATO force to letting the Afghans try to manage the war. And he talked about being in the moment, and he talked about being where he was needed. And he said that sometimes I would have to, have to go on a video chat with the president or my commander. Another time I'd have to meet with a mullah. Another time I'd have to meet with the president of Afghanistan. Another time I have to go right to the front because one of our troops had come on, our squads had come under heavy fire and had suffered casualties. So in other words, it's parsing your time. That's a man of character. That's also a man who translates what character is into action. Character too is ambition. Ambition sometimes gets a negative concept because we think, oh, you're just in it for yourself. Well, yes, you want to succeed, but if you don't put yourself in a position to lead others, who's going to do it? That takes courage. Curiosity, we often overlook that. The ability to ask questions. If you don't ask questions, it means you really aren't interested in anything, okay? And compassion, it's so critical. Compassion is a sense of caring. It's thinking about others and how you serve them. Back to our other concept we were just talking about. And you know what? You got to laugh at life sometimes, because if we're all obsessed with what could go wrong or all the bad things, life gets pretty boring. So let's laugh at ourselves once in a while. X factors. Pick. My little challenge for you is to pick a role model. Maybe it's in your organization. Maybe it's a historical figure. Whatever it is. What makes that man or that woman very special? What does he or she do that inspires others? What is it about her personality or her example that draws people to her? What is her X factor? Study that person, observe, and then translate to you. What can I learn from that person, and what can I apply to my own life? Okay. Our next concept is
John.
Yeah, Vasily.
Yep. You've talked a lot about these some of these characteristics and behaviors. What would you say is the one behavior or trait you've seen derail more leaders' careers?
Oh, I'd have to say ambition, and what I mean by that is where ambition becomes aggressive and aggression into you put yourself first always. And for that reason, nobody wants to be around you. You're sucking up all the oxygen in the room. You take credit for things that really don't belong to you. You denigrate other people. Your ambition is so strong that you alienate people. So I think if there's one sin there, I think it's ambition. The other one I would say would be lack of curiosity, because if you're not curious, you're really a dullard. You just sort of, life just goes by, that's fine, but if you're in a management or leadership position, you cannot afford not to be curious. You have to be thinking. You have to be curious, and you have to ask questions, and you have to ask people who do the work, ask them questions about how they do things and maybe a why, and you ask them in ways to help them teach you so you in turn can teach others. So I think that's two of the things. Innovation is our key concept here. And I think innovation gets a bad rap because so many times people think innovation means a brand new product. And seldom does it mean that. It simply means, it's to my way of thinking, and I've written this and said it many times, it's applied creativity. You apply it to a problem, and you innovate in the space in which you're allowed to innovate. And innovation is important, as research shows, but it rests on three key concepts. You have to be open to ideas, to opportunities. You have to have the discipline to recognize a possible solution, or a disciplined thinking, as Jim Collins talks about in his book, Good to Great. And also you have to trust people. Trust them to do the same thing. You know, all managers or all leaders are not creative. I'd say probably the majority of them are not creative, all right? But they put people into positions who are creative and allow them to prosper and to share ideas. A gentleman I've gotten to know very well and written about before is Rich Sheridan. He has a business, Menlo Innovation, which is a software development house, and it's very people-centric. And one of the things that Rich talks about is if you want people to be creative, if you want people to innovate, you have to drive fear out of the organization. You have to make it safe for people to think, to experiment, and yes, and to fail. And if you don't do those things, then you're closeting yourself off from new opportunities. So driving fear out of the organization is essential. So innovation questions. What's one thing you can do? Think about, if you're a manager, who on my team is a big picture thinker? How can I challenge her to apply those skills to problems we're facing today? Or if I have someone who is more detail oriented, how can I make that person, put him or her into a position where that detail and analytic mind can really help our team succeed? And what could I do differently to help each one of those types of people, or all types of your people in your organization? What can I do to help them do their jobs better? And part of that will come down to, hey, what can I do to help you succeed? How can I help you do your job better? You know, that's a really powerful question. Whenever a boss says, boy, how can I help you do your job? That is just profound. And the first time you ask it, if an employee hears it, they're going to be taken aback, because they're going to go, I don't know. I mean, aren't I supposed to help you? No. My job as my manager, as your leader, is to help you succeed. Because if you can't do your job effectively, then we can't. Our team will not succeed. And that leads into our next concept, which is engagement. We've talked about our mindfulness, our opportunity, our character, our innovation, and in some ways those are maybe inner directed. Engagement is the reaching out, the connecting to make a positive difference in the lives of others. And no organization succeeds without the engagement of its people. One organization I know that does this very well is Ritz-Carlton. And you know, it's a hotel chain, but it gives each member in that organization various degrees of decision making. And by doing that, by trusting their responsibility, they get a more empowered workforce. People like to work there. Southwest Airlines does this, other businesses do, but it's kind of like helping people discover themselves, reach their purpose, so in turn they can be more effective and do their job more effectively. Okay, and engagement is rooted in purpose, our why. You complement it through a sense of mindfulness. You enrich it through your presence, and you commit to what is my purpose, what is our organizational purpose, and how can I drive that more critically. And you know, sometimes purpose is a word which is used a lot, and sometimes it's better to define it as by what it's not. And A couple of years ago, I was in Amsterdam to give a keynote, and I had the opportunity. I've been to Amsterdam a number of times, but I went to the Rijksmuseum, which is their national museum. And obviously, as you know from history, Holland was quite a seagoing power in the 16th and 17th century. And so there are lots of paintings of, you know, ships. And there was one of a frigate out at sea, and it was in becalmed waters. And it just was sort of listing there. And I think of the image of a sailboat in a lake, or, you know, there's no wind and there are no waves. It's just rocking back and forth. It might be a pleasant thing to do on a summer afternoon, but I don't think we want to spend our whole life in the middle of a lake just drifting back and forth, you know, aimlessly. And that's what living without purpose is like. Life is sort of aimless. It is. You don't know what it is you want to do. And so it's so my challenge to you is, what's my purpose, and how can I engage my purpose in challenging myself and my team to work more effectively together? And some questions on that is, how do you connect better with others? What could you be doing as a manager to make yourself more effective? What changes would you be making to help yourself to connect more effectively? And this kind of connecting is something, concept is resurfacing, and it's a sense of humility. You know, I always tease. I was back at my alma mater, Georgetown, a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to business MBAs. I got my undergraduate degree, not my MBA, and I was challenging them, and I said, you know, humility is not something that they teach in business school, which got a laugh. And because humility, sometimes that's that ability to step back, and it's that ability to say, I don't have all the answers. There's a sense of vulnerability about it. But the great thing about humility is it's actually a sign of strength. Because if you're a humble person, you're a centered person. You know yourself. You know what you can do and where you need help. And a humble person is never afraid to ask for help. A humble person is never afraid to reach out and to compliment another person. A humble person is one who engages with others. A humble leader creates engagement throughout the entire organization. And so for that reason, I think humility is really critical to a sense of engagement. It's what it is you want to achieve and why it is, and how you can bring people together. And so that all of these concepts come together in the sense of Moxie, which is our overall concept of your personal determination focused on your goals by being more mindful, creating opportunities for others, emphasizing your character, enabling yourself to think and challenging others to think more creatively, and as we just said, engaging with others. So that's my formal presentation. All of you are invited. I have a self-assessment on a website, and you click the link here and you can get there. You all can take it. It's a question you can assess your leadership skills. So I invite you to do it, and I'm ready to take any formal questions if you have them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, John. That was really informative and very interesting. So there's a question here about mistakes, and what's the one mistake you've witnessed leaders making more frequently than others?
The one mistake that leaders make is not acknowledging mistakes. They blame others, or they pretend it doesn't happen. So that's the biggest mistake a leader can make, is ignoring a mistake you made or the team made. Good leaders own a mistake, and they take responsibility for it. So if a person on your team made a screw up, you can talk to that person about what they do differently, but you don't call that person out and said, Vaishali, you messed this up and so our team succeeded. No, you say, we fell short together, and we'll all succeed together. But you own it. You don't point fingers. You correct it, but you don't point fingers. You own the issue.
Okay, that's great. There are some people who said they were unable to click on the link, John. Do you think you can copy and paste the link into the chat box maybe so that everyone can access it before the end of the webinar?
Yep, I can do that.
Okay, great.
Oh, it's there. It's right there.
It's in the link?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's in the webinar.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's right in there. If I clicked on it, it's right there.
In the handout section, right? Okay, so it's in
Yep.
the handout section of the webinar viewer for anybody who would like access to it and isn't able to get it.
In another way, if that doesn't work, I have a little subsite called iBaldoni, the letter I, BALDONI.com, and you can take the assessment that way. Just go to self-assessments and you'll find it there. So.
Okay, great. All right, we have a couple of other questions here. How do you manage using humor in the workplace without being labeled as the class clown by some of your more conservative employees?
Well, good point. I mean, not every opportunity is a laughing matter. Although I'll be telling you, some funerals I've attended, I've laughed very hard, and that's because I've laughed with other people, not at fond remembrances of the person who's passed on. So, in other words, if it's appropriate, you don't do put down jokes. You don't do jokes that denigrate a race or a gender. The best way to do humor is to look on the lighter side of things. When things go wrong, own it and say, hey, well, we kind of messed up there, and I guess that's on me. So be self-deprecating, I think. In other words, if you make yourself the butt of the joke, that's a good thing. But if you don't want to be the quote class clown, the constant crack up, because that gets boring, that gets tiresome after a while. But I think the sense of humor is being able to not take self or even the work serious, and even the quest of work so seriously. In other words, let's enjoy life as we go forward. We're all it's a reaffirmation of our humanity.
Great. Okay, here's another question. Are leaders born or made?
I think yes and no. I think people are born with a certain degree of ambition and want to be in charge. Others have it thrust upon them, and those sometimes are the best leaders of all. And leadership manifests itself at every level in an organization. You can have a CEO who's maybe an effective manager, but really isn't much of a leader. But you can have somebody on the shop floor who's an excellent leader. And how would I define that? That person on the shop floor is someone that other people look to for advice, direction, scope, chest. They trust that person. So leadership occurs at every single level. And I think we have certain tendencies that we're born with, but for most of us, leadership is a sense of we cultivate it. And also we choose to be in leadership. We choose that responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's another question. Any advice for leaders of startups? How is leadership changing with disruption and so much of change in businesses today?
That's a really good question. And I don't know if there's an easy answer, except that don't fall in love with disruption so that you throw out all the rules. There is the reason that things have organizations have been built themselves on tried and true methods as it comes to people. It's because it works. There is no one size fits all in management. If there were, there would not be any need for business schools. So it's the kind of concept that a healthy respect for success and what's worked, but also a healthy disregard for doing things the same old way. I think in the age of disruption, there's always a precursor. There's always something that happened before, not the identical problem, but the identical way of problem solving. So I think that's my advice. I would not be so willing to throw everything out with the dishwater. I would try to find ways to respect that's come what has come before you. Find a mentor, find an experienced leader, learn from him or her.
Okay, great. I'm going to share some of the results from our poll. So the first question that you asked is, what is your top leadership challenge? 30% said self-improvement, 30% said driving innovation, 17% said employee engagement, 13% said emotional intelligence, and 9% said decision-making. And the other poll that you had launched, I make time to reflect on my performance every day. 32% said agree, 24% said strongly agree, and neutral, so both were 24%, and 20% said disagree. So what do you think of those results, John?
Oh, well, I'm very encouraged. It means we have a plurality or a majority of people who are working on self-awareness. And, you know, that's an effective attribute of leadership. And I think the reason that people don't have spend time on self-awareness is because they're busy. They don't think they have time to do it. Where reality dictates you have time, you cannot function effectively if you don't take time for yourself, if you don't take time to reflect.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, thank you again, John. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Gaurav Bansal. Again, he's going to share some details of an exclusive offer from Starter Learning for all the attendees who are here today. And if you're interested in learning from the top global leaders, please log on to our e-learning platform, starterlearning.com, to avail a special promotion meant for all the attendees of this webinar, which is a free trial and gives you access to an extensive library. It's valid for 10 days from the date of registration. Gaurav, do you want to add anything over here?
Thank you, Vishali. The only thing which I would like to add here is urge or request each of you been there with us in the last 1 hour. If you still have a question on leadership, if you still have a question on team management, if you still have a question how to progress in your personal and professional life, do not hesitate to email it to us, and we will ensure that John will personally reply to every question of yours. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to interact with the best of the best leaders. John has been there in the industry for so long. There are many scenarios, there are many business opportunities which you'd like to discuss. Feel free, do not hesitate, send a mail to me directly, do not hesitate, send a mail to John, but we'll be there to help you. Thank you. Thanks, Vishali.
Okay, great. And now we're going to go ahead and launch another quick poll just to find out how many people are interested in learning more about Starter Learning Talent Development Solutions for your organization. So we'll go ahead and launch that. And, you know, please go to starterlearning.com to register, find out more. And I'm going to just make sure that no one has any other questions before we end today's session. And with that, I'll just ask John, do you have any final thoughts, John, for today's session? John, did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. I've just asked everybody if they have any other final questions, and I wanted to find out if you have any final thoughts before we close out the webinar.
No, I think I thank everybody for participating. As your first poll question talked about a willingness to improve, one of the ways you do that is by joining seminars like this. So I thank you for spending some time with us today, and I hope that we've helped you gain a greater sense of what it is you know can do to be a more effective leader, because I think all of us have that potential, and we simply have to recognize it within ourselves and apply it.
Great. Okay, thanks, John, and thanks to you all for joining us today. Now, again, if you come up with any additional questions, please feel free to send them to contact us at starterlearning.com at any time. And we hope you found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. And please feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. And everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.